Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Halfwatt podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard. Today's podcast is with Jerry Smith from ADT. He's a PM. Yeah, tell me about yourself, Jerry.
Oh, well, where do we start?
First I want to hear your background before you were a PM, because this sounds interesting.
Okay, yeah, interesting background, interesting. So should we start with the colorful beginning?
Do.
Okay. All right, so like many young men in life, I think, caught up in the wrong crowd, doing a little bit of the wrong stuff.
Well played.
Always managed to stay out of any serious trouble, but I did find myself in a position where I was in possession of some stolen audio equipment for my car.
Okay.
Used to love, ground pounding, stereo systems back in the day.
And you're a guitarist.
And I am a guitar player now. I wasn't then, but yeah. And so I found myself incarcerated for a couple of days, in possession of stolen goods. I worked graveyard shift at a gas station and just bought them out of a van, There was a sting operation, as it happens to be. Yes. And so I was one of the semi-innocent, victims of circumstance. So I found myself in jail for a couple of days, and my grandfather, who literally was a rocket scientist, he was a weapons engineer for Jet Labs.
No kidding.
Yeah, he said, "Son, I'll get you out of trouble if you go to college."
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And so, back in the day, DeVry Technical Institute was a brick and mortar college.
Oh, absolutely.
And did the whole thing and graduated and went.
So you have an electronics degree, then?
I do have an electronics degree, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so large, heavy technical background. Mm-hmm. And I graduated and went to work for a two-way radio company.
Which one?
It's called Raycom.
Yeah, I know Raycom.
They're out of Southern California. Yeah. Okay, Bear Communications is like their big competitor,
Yeah, they're the ones up here. But Raycom.
Yeah.
Are you from LA or San Diego?
Yeah,
or?
Southern California. So grew up in Claremont, in LA County.
No kidding.
Are you from that area
I'm
too?
from Claremont, San Diego. So I'm from El Cajon, Oceanside.
The other Claremont.
The other Claremont.
Yes.
I lived in the other Claremont. When you said that, I was like, Claremont? Oh, you want to be Claremont, the big one.
Well, if you can call it that.
You want to call it big.
Right.
It's like Covina.
Well, Covina's large.
Anyway, so you're from basically LA.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I escaped the concrete jungle at like 23 years old.
So you worked for this two-way radio company,
right?
Putting stuff together for them.
Yeah, no, I was a bench technician. Mm-hmm. Did a lot of two-way radio service for them, and when I left there, I ended up being recruited into Motorola's Area F High Tech Depot, out of El Segundo, and that was really quite the experience. It took me from being a general technologist on radios to touching airplane transponders to first generation mobile data terminals for police vehicles, the MDTs. Yeah. Wow, you sound like you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm kind
That's
of a nut
great.
For that.
There was also the first generation vehicle location, Loran. Bingo, you got it. Yeah,
and there was LoJack, and
LoJack was recovery.
Navigator.
Right, LoJack was recovery. Loran was navigator for police and ambulances and things like that. So, a lot of exposure early on to new, emerging technologies.
Yeah, because that was they were just starting to get into trunking. Well, LA was into trunking before anybody else, and. Yeah, I was familiar with the Motorola trunking system here when OHSU lost their license and they had to jump on the 800 trunk, and we discovered all of its ins and outs. Yeah. And now all ham radio is all basically Motorola turbo kind of. It's got another name for it, but it essentially is all that.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, it's great to talk to a
DMR.
radio guy, man.
Yeah.
You know, there's just a few of us left.
Did you ever
right?
get your ham license and do all that stuff?
I didn't. It was more a professional career, you know, not so much in the hobby level. Although we did have fun listening to. I went from two-way radio. Yes, bingo.
Bingo.
I went from two-way radio into cell phone technology, and my favorite instrument was the Schlumberger test set because I could actually hear the handshakes from cellular communication.
Oh, so you could follow the whole thing.
I could follow the conversation.
I couldn't do that. I didn't have that equipment. I could just hear.
Yeah.
If I was in the cell, I could hear in the cell. I was in the military, so I would get a Yaesu. When I was on watch or had duty, I would just check it out, check out a UHF antenna, and just sit there at the desk and play with it.
That's fun stuff.
Oh my God. Because that's when it was all like 860 megahertz and above, and you could just go, and you could just listen to conversation after conversation after conversation.
And click, drop into a really good one.
yes, I absolutely did. Matter of fact, when I got out of the Navy and moved up here, I bought an ACE AOR scanner, still have it, 1,000 channel open scanner with no cell. But that's before everything went all, CDMA and TDMA.
Oh yeah, the multiple frequency bands and everything.
What the modulation went from just open regular FM to CDMA or TDMA.
Right.
Then you really had to modify stuff.
Yeah,
so
you've got to have like a cellular kind of a receiver in that situation.
You can tap off of the discriminator and build a circuit for it. But I wasn't that into it. I'm like, at that point I'd been a spook long enough. I'm like, I don't want to hear anybody else's.
You know, that's funny you mentioned that. We seem contemporaries, right? Do you remember the advertisements for Mr. Microphone?
Yeah.
Hey baby, we'll be back to pick you up later, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, discovering the intermediate frequency mixer was magical. I built a transmitter that talked at 11.7 megahertz.
So you could
and I could just talk to anybody
jam
on the
right
freeway.
in there.
Yeah,
that's funny.
It was pretty fun.
That is funny. Yeah, not too many people know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So I teach at night school, and I talk about a lot of history, and most people don't know that in the United Kingdom, when they were looking for Russian spies or Soviet spies, the local oscillators were coupled so poorly that they would leak, and so the GCHQ could home in on what frequency they were listening on, knowing what the local oscillator that was leaking out of the antenna was.
Yeah.
So if they were tuned to this frequency, then they could figure out which house was tuned to what frequency, and then what they were listening to as those numbers would come across, or whatever transmissions. It was amazing. I was just like,
they need to add a notch filter to
they
that
did.
thing or
They eventually figured it out because there was enough leaks in the British system that they came back and said, better put a capacitor or two in there.
Right. That's great.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, definitely.
So you got into all the Motorola stuff to begin with, and some of the higher tech stuff, and then what'd you do?
Lots of two-way radio communications things. I ended up being headhunted, great turn of events in my career, to become, pardon me, an ambulatory telemetry distributed antenna systems engineer. Okay, so this is early in data communications for body-worn type technologies. And I worked for
the medical field?
In the medical field, I worked for a company called Protocol. And their niche was ambulatory patient monitoring for heart rhythm and pulse oximetry.
Wow.
So the oxygen saturation in your blood. So between understanding a heart rhythm and understanding pulse oximetry, you get a really good idea of what the body's doing and its state of health. And so its application was in hospitals for post-cardiac or post-pulmonary surgical patients. And the idea was that they could get up out of bed wearing a body-worn instrument and ambulatory monitoring throughout the hospital. And so the long and the short of it, it really wasn't that high tech. It was based in VHF and UHF frequencies. The VHF band, we planted all of our transmitters in vacant TV channels.
Okay.
So it was the same, like 174 to 198 or something like that, right? And the technology was basically a cable TV system. Very similar to what you'd find in an apartment building or something like that, distributing cable TV to the sets, the viewers. It was the opposite.
That's neat.
But electronics are reciprocal, right? You can turn a speaker into a microphone. Right. Same thing. So we had these distributed antenna systems throughout hospitals. Yeah. And boy, balancing those things was difficult. And depending on the location that you were in, very challenging.
No kidding.
Yeah. San Diego. You're from San Diego.
I'm from San Diego, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Mercy Scripps Hospital.
Yeah. Been there.
Right, downtown San Diego. Yeah. One of my favorite clients, one of my favorite locations to work. The Navy base is down there.
Very rich RF environment.
Very rich RF environment.
We couldn't even turn certain radars on within in the coastline. We would just screw up like channel 6 or something.
Exactly. And at that base, the Navy SEALs do a lot of incursion extraction. I'm not sure if I'm getting the language right, but bringing sailors into the coastline and then extracting them from the coastline.
Yeah.
During those times, they also did a lot of radio jamming and everything. And it was fun for me as a young systems engineer, 28 maybe, working with seasoned field engineers who were in their early 50s, with me coming to the game with a higher level of understanding of RF.
Sure.
They're medical systems engineers, biomeds, working on ventilators and a variety of different, medical technologies. But they installed the system and placed it in a vacant television channel, but were not experienced enough really to understand the entire RF spectrum from the perspective of a spectrum analyzer.
Yeah, and what else is happening in...
Right.
That they don't know.
Yeah, and the Spec A, I mean, that's your main tool as a radio guy. You can see you see everything that's going on. And we had this system, fought it for 3 or 4 weeks. I was based out of Beaverton. In fact, probably less than a quarter mile from where I'm working now.
Nice.
Yeah. And every weekend, the telemetry system just would poop out, man. We'd get dropout. We'd lose cardiac rhythms and things like that. That's not good because the technology is a force multiplier. Fewer nurses, more patients. Right. You need solid data.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a trip down there. And sure enough, man, every weekend, I spent 3 weekends there. And every weekend in that certain band of the spectrum, the SEALs activities would light up. We'd see helicopters out off the coast and everything. And bang, the whole... the whole radio spectrum would just fill up. Yeah. And so, we ended up moving it, and that's all we had to do. But the right tools.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I was stationed on the amphib base my last 3.5 years.
Nice.
So I was sandwiched in a command that was between Special Warfare and the Buds barracks there. It was at the time it was called Fleet Tactical Station Group.
You were comms? What did you do?
That particular command, I did some comm work, but our purpose was tactical deception. So we had a variety of equipments on board that we could do that with on our equipment, and it ran the gambit.
Right.
So I was really familiar with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, some of the inadvertent jamming activities that happened, we were the cause of, us and another group on North Island. We would do a lot of that, not in conjunction with SEAL work, that they had their own stuff, but we would go out and exercise with our battle group and do whatever we needed to do.
Right.
And matter of fact, I was out with Battle Group Foxtrot on a destroyer, and get this message, and the guy goes, "Okay, go ahead and do some like jamming stuff, like do what you got to do." And I'm like, was an E6, and I'm like, you want to give me some specifications? Nah, just
light it up.
Anything? Is anything open? Anything's open, whatever you want. And I looked at the other guys and I said, watch to see how long this lasts. Wham! And I hit. The one I jammed that blew them away that they were not ready for was called Fleet Tack Warning, which is a frequency that it's a UHF frequency they have to have up. Every ship on the waterfront has to have it.
Right.
Every radio has to have it on. Every single ship. If the radio central is not manned, then the quarterdeck has to listen to this same frequency. So you either have a radio man listening to it 24/7 or a quarterdeck watch.
Right.
They didn't say anything was off limits, so wham, I jammed that. I jammed the controlling frequencies for what we call Beaver, which is how they move the ships in and out.
Right.
And oh man, by the time they tried in vain to get back to tell us to stop, and I kept jamming every frequency that they called us on, from bridge to bridge to.
Can't hear you. Too busy
we couldn't
jamming
hear
right
nothing.
now.
I jammed all the HF stuff, and every time I could think of the next way they'd try to communicate to us, I would either change the frequency or jam that, and I would use a
nice
Mad
work.
Dog, which was a thing. Well, we did some work with them as a joke. I recorded a talk show in San Diego, and I had an hour or two recording of it,
right.
and I had a Tascam 4-track recorder player.
Yep.
So you would put a standard cassette in, and you would have 2 tracks forward, and then you could bring up track 3, which would be reverse, backwards audio.
Okay.
So then I took the white noise, I would put white or pink noise in there, and then play 2 tracks forward, and then 1 track backwards, and I would bring the sound levels up. So you could hear this through this, deception, this jamming. You could hear somebody talking in a normal tone. Then you could hear backwards.
Right.
And I would just bring the levels up. And I was playing around with this just to see what the psychological effect was.
Right.
And I had equipment that was mounted outside. So I walked into combat of the ship I was on to see what the effect was. And we're right off the coast, so it's not like there's not a whole lot going on anyway. Everybody was up against the speaker trying to figure out what the hell was coming out of it. And I mean, there was like a couple of people where they were supposed to be, and everybody else was piled around the speaker going, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And I just walked in and I just looked at it and it started busting up.
That's
and they all turned around and they said, what are you doing? What is that? And I'm like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's doing its job.
Jerry Springer, you guys are really paying close attention to
it. we had more fun. The crew we had more fun doing stuff. They finally did get a hold of us, and then they came back and gave us specifics on what you could and could not do.
That's awesome.
I took out the carriers, air traffic control.
Yeah.
I took out everything. I took out everything I knew that they needed.
Right.
Oh man, it was fun.
That's great. That actually reminds me. Can I share a story with you
do.
also?
Yeah.
Back in San Diego, here again. Still with the medical technology company that I was at. They had sold to Welch Allyn. Now, Welch Allyn is a big name.
Yeah.
If you walk into a doctor's office and get your blood pressure taken, or if they look up your eyes or ears or nose, they're using Welch Allyn instruments, 90% market share. They purchased Protocol for the patient monitoring technology. And at that time, we were just emerging from VHF, UHF radio into the original 802.11 frequency hopping spread spectrum wireless LAN.
Wow.
So now we're talking about extraordinarily robust communications, more so than we have now in G, N, A, B, C, any of these wireless LANs. They all they manage their frequencies in a predictable manner. And this was just emerging military technology at that time.
Especially
frequency
spread
spectrum.
Yeah.
And so the most challenging job maybe in my entire career was, this is 2.5 gigahertz technology, so highly directional, was putting a patient monitoring system in the United States naval ship Mercy.
Oh, nice. Yeah. USNS.
Based out of San Diego.
The big white one.
Yes. 1,000-bed hospital ship.
Yeah.
That ship can do anything except for organ transplants. And when I was on that job, I designed the system, and I was also the project manager for implementing the system. We had no idea that we'd have to be drilling through quarter-inch steel for, you know.
And it's got to be waterproof when you're done.
We're used to like drywall, right?
Yeah. That's a whole different world.
And not only that, but trying to put a 2.5 gigahertz wireless LAN in a metal container that has many containers and hallways and things like that going on with it was brilliantly challenging. And the long and the short of it on the technical side was we had instruments that would read signal strength and give us, more importantly than signal strength, data throughput. So we would know what kind of data from any position around a patient bed or in a surgical room or what have you. And lots of shadows, lots of reflective areas, things that you'd think, geez, I can see the AP from here, but my instrument can't hear it at all.
No kidding.
Because of multipath and things that are
because
going on.
there's so many different shapes inside that space.
Right.
There are a lot of different angles.
Right,
and
exactly.
And attenuation here. And
and you just move a couple feet and boom, you got full signal, right?
But you got to get it everywhere.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
So that was a big major challenge.
Surprised they didn't use like Radiax or something. Like a Radiax cable
I'm
going
familiar
through the
with the cable.
It's the opposite of Heliax. Heliax is enclosed, but Radiax has those
it's
slots
leaky
in it.
cable.
It's leaky cable.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
It's just
the wavelength of 2.5 gigahertz though is really small.
It's really tiny. Yeah.
So you can't put it on, you know, that sort of a antenna, if you will. So we ended up, you know, negotiating everything, figuring it all out, making all the adjustments that we needed to. But the story that's there is that the captain of the USNS Mercy was notoriously grumpy, and I'm a coffee snob. I used to roast coffee. Almost left technology to roast coffee.
Nice.
Actually, yeah, came real close. But so I traveled with my own coffee at the time. And so he was like a Folgers man. He's just like this hardcore, you know, Navy guy who's, you know, grumpy, and he likes his Folgers coffee. By the end of the 3 weeks that I was on board, not only was he drinking my coffee, but we were hanging out on the bridge.
Nice.
And it's a, you know, we're in port, so it's not a full crew or anything. In fact, it was basically like an empty hospital. But it was really cool connecting with them. And they ended up gifting me with a box of legitimate Cuban cigars.
Oh, no kidding.
They had just gone to Sumatra. There was the big tidal waves that had hit Sumatra. They had just done a medical job in Sumatra, and had come back. And they gifted me with a map of their course. I don't know a better word for it, you know, the course that the ship took from Sumatra back home. And that was a big win, but the bigger one, I think, was, now keep in mind, this is a surgical war hospital, okay? And in order to train the medics and the surgeons and all the people with the traumas that they'll experience at war, they have incredibly lifelike human dummies that are robotic.
Oh, no kidding.
They'll pump blood. They'll scream.
Wow,
They'll do
I did
all
not
these
know
things.
that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Completely lifelike as well. And on my last day on board the ship, again, it's an empty. It's an empty. I mean, it's like Halloween. You know, the flickering lights in the long dark hallway kind of a situation. You know. And I've got my suitcase with me, and I'm rolling out, and I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody. And those clowns, man, military and law enforcement, have a sick sense of humor. And
I can hear this one coming.
They had placed one of these trauma dummies right behind the last door that I had to pass through. And it scared the shit out of me, man. And there was 14 or 15 crewmen laughing their asses off on the other side of the door.
Well played, sailors.
Yeah, you know.
As you crap your
pants. It was
pants.
great. But, you know, I mean, what a high compliment, right?
Yeah.
You know,
to be... we only punk the people we love, honest to God. That's exactly... I was in for 9 years in the Navy, and that's exactly what it was about.
Right.
Yeah, they liked you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would just they just watch you go.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Throw cans at you.
Exactly.
Oh man, I could tell sea stories all night. I did electronic warfare when I was in, so I was familiar with that.
Stuff,
yeah, so I was working on exactly what you're talking about. Our spectrum analyzer, my first piece of equipment was a 1959 Sylvania.
Sylvania. I was going to guess Cushman, but okay.
It's if you look up the WLR-1C, Whirly 1C is what we called it, or if you go on the Blueback, they've got one on there. You can kind of see what the head end looks like, but you could barely fit. You couldn't fit this and that and the antennas in this room. I mean, it was just massive. It was all hybrid tube. And,
I'll buy that for $1. It's hard to imagine now, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
It was just it was a work of art to operate. And but it was, you're looking at one frequency at a time.
Right.
So it had some special things that you could scan. And then we had other equipment that bolted on that gave us a wider spectrum.
Okay.
And then the newest piece of equipment that I went to work on, it's still in the fleet now. It's called an SLQ-32. I worked on the Variant 3, which had the ECM portion to it. They're just now installing Variant 7 of
ECM,
that.
what's ECM?
Electronic countermeasures.
Okay,
so electronic support measures
yeah.
is I'm listening to you and I'm gathering intel, and electronic countermeasures is now I know what you are, here it comes. And I'm going to send you something back that's going to confuse you.
And that could be misinformation or jamming or whatever those kinds of things are.
I really did. Half of what I did was electronic warfare, and the other half of what I did was deception in one form or another, either tactical deception, but either electronic or
That's fascinating. Yeah. That's awesome.
It was the job I loved. I absolutely loved the job, and I questioned my logic in getting out, but also. It was time. I mean, I was E6. I wasn't going to make E7. I'd gotten enough trouble. Like you, I knew my way around the wrong parts of town. So, I was kind of done. I just kind of get out. But I became a ham. And matter of fact, my call sign is K7 ESM for that reason.
Oh, right on.
Electronic support measure.
Yeah,
so,
cool.
So, you did. That's fascinating, by the way. What happened? What did you get out of that field? Why did you get out of the medical telemetry data moving field? What happened after that?
A lot of serious and rapid career growth.
Yeah, because that's a hell of a market. I mean, I work for OHSU now, and that's telemetry is a huge deal up there.
Absolutely.
DAS, distributed antenna systems are
DAS
monster.
is huge. DAS is huge right
it's
now.
Huge.
Absolutely.
And the ones, my former company, PSI, the ones that they're putting in, they can attenuate and control exactly the signal levels they want at any given point, so they're stopping the ring around and the issues that they're having because they put these things in and then realize, just like you said, if you're not balanced, you don't get them attenuated right. You're at the threshold of a building, the repeater picks it up, and the DAS system picks it up, and now you've got that slight delay, and then that ring around, and it just causes nothing but issues.
Worse yet, co-channel interference, or when you got too high a power source near a receiver, you get descents, right? There's all those things that happen.
I did that with an AES radio. I desensed, honest to God, I desensed, it didn't mean to. We found this perfect spot for our radio and our IP link, and we put it up on the perfect spot.
Right.
And about maybe a month later, this guy calls me up. He goes, and he was from I think it's Bear. I think it was Bearcom. Don't quote me on that. But it's one of the local groups here. It wasn't Day. It was the other one. And they said, "Hey, you by chance don't have a radio up on top of this school, do you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, we run a special needs bus net out of there, basically a radio system out of a repeater,
right?
And this thing's desensing every so often." And I went, "What's going on?" He goes, "Well, it's like my squelch level's going up, and we can hear the noise."
Right.
And I went, "What frequency are you on?" And he told me, and I went, "It's me. It's hands down, it's me."
Right.
And he goes, "Well, I don't really."
Now, was it a sideband or was it carrier?
No, it was,
Where was it?
carrier.
Really?
A 2.5 watt signal.
That's a lot of power.
On a 9 dB gain antenna.
Yeah.
Right there next to
Right.
it. And I said, "You don't have cavity filters on that thing, do you?" He goes, "Man, those things cost like $2,000. I'm like, "Dude, And I says, I will move my antenna. And he went, what? And I went, I'm a ham. And he goes, I'm a ham too. And I said, well, what? I caused the interference.
What took you so long to figure it out, fellow ham, right?
I said, it's me, bro. I'm the one doing it. And sure enough, we could see anytime we transmitted they couldn't talk on it. And I said, that's entirely us. So we took our perfect location and moved it 50 feet down the thing, and that was it. He goes, oh, thank you. And I'm like, he was just shocked because I'm like, he goes, I thought we were going to have to fight about this. I said, absolutely not. Your radio, you were there first. It's your radio system. Right. It's for special needs kids. The last thing I'm going to do is fight with you on it. Here it goes, man.
Exactly.
You know, we have LMR 400, baby. We can put it anywhere you want it.
You bet.
So, yeah.
You bet. So speaking of that, let me ask you an interesting theoretical question that just came up recently. I know we put a place marker on the other stuff there, but AES radios, installation of an AES radio, let's say in an indoor environment where the radio itself is not too far from the antenna itself, indoor mounted antenna. Someone recently told me that coiling, I wish our audience could see this, coiling a wire in a circular pattern and then looping it over itself into a figure 8 reduces the loss of the signal in the antenna. Now, I can't put that together.
Yeah.
I can't put that together. I don't see any reason. I'm playing with
inductivity. It would act like a choke.
That's what I think.
Yeah, that's what act like, especially the turning it over.
Right.
I don't know what that. I know that I've seen him coil. I'm not the AES, but a lot of hams when they install 2 meter and 440 stuff, they'll put one loop.
Yeah.
On their
and you want bend radius to be big, depending on whatever that frequency is.
I've seen them do them small too.
Sure.
But I'd have to. I've got an antenna book at home. I could probably look that up.
Yeah, it's just weird to me because
that is bizarre.
Like coaxial cable is the conductor. Yeah. At worst, you get like skinning effect at high frequencies, right? I don't see how, basically creating an inductor almost, right? I don't see how that would at all improve signal strength.
I don't either. I think it would increase X sub L.
That's what I would think.
Inductive reactance, which would then detune your radio. It would detune your antenna to your radio. So you would have a 50 ohm impedance, and now you've added more inductance, and you would change that level. So your radio might now be putting RF into a 45 or a 30 ohm load.
Sure, right. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
That's the way I would see it.
A little bit of validation.
Yeah.
I actually had a deep and passionate debate, let's say, about this with a person who has much more experience with me, it's specifically in the fire alarm industry, which AES radios, the foundational part of that.
Yeah.
But I'm a radio guy.
I would most of the radios that we just installed a bunch of, most of them that we did, the antennas literally go right on top of the cabinet.
Sure.
If you've got enough radios to cover the mesh.
Right.
So for those of you who are not technically proficient in this, if you have an AES radio and it can see multiple radios, usually 2 or more, then it's considered a Netcon 5 mesh, and you've got a good connectivity. So the more radios you have in your network, the less external antennas you have to use. And because you've got enough signal going in the building that it can talk to 2 or 3. We had to change 2 of them just this week because one of them, they're doing construction next to the building.
Oh,
and as they get more and more equipment.
Right. Shit changes a little bit.
Yeah, it changes a little bit. And we're like, well, the building's not going to get any smaller. So we moved it up. That was easy. And then we had one that we just couldn't get a good signal out of. So we had to pop it through a firewall and come up the other side. But I have seen those radios go in. Basically, they're supposed to be about 2.5 watts, 2 to 2.5 watts. If they're going like 4 watts, then people don't know this, but that means that the radio's is putting out more power than it should.
Do they automatically adjust their gain based? No, they don't. Okay.
No, so that's why they give you a bird watt meter with them so that you can look at your SWR and look at how much power you're putting out.
No shit.
But they don't. I mean, that's what they encourage you to use.
I was unaware of that.
But most people, even when they look at it, they go, "Oh, this radio's putting out 5 watts or 4 watts." Well, they don't realize is that their impedance is off. and something's wrong.
Yeah.
And you can tune an antenna to a transmitter poorly.
Absolutely.
And your currents are off, and it will actually, the radio will just, it'll work great. And then one day it won't because it's overheating.
I've got a good one for you on tuning antennas.
Yeah.
Early in my career, back in two-way radio, here again working in actually low frequency, 30 megahertz comms. For,
so you've got large
sheriffs,
antennas.
Very long antennas. I was just cutting my teeth, and when you install a mobile antenna on a low frequency radio, you get the length of a whip antenna that's going to cover the lowest frequency band, right? The longest wavelength. And your job is to trim it down using a bird swirr,
until you figure it out.
Until your standing wave ratio goes way down and your power is up and everything. Well, I was actually working on a vehicle that was parked next to a building that had a corrugated metal siding. And
it's affecting your...
And I didn't
think about it.
Fresh out of college, didn't think about... I was thinking about standing waves on the antenna. I wasn't thinking about the waves that would set up bouncing back off of the wall.
Because you've got this near field effect from the metal. Absolutely.
Exactly. I went through 2 antennas before calling my manager and to say, I can't get this thing to work right.
You're out there going, why?
Right.
Why?
Exactly.
Doing a Nancy Kerrigan. Why?
Precisely.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Radio communications, especially radio communications, baffle the bejesus out of me because EW is looking at radars, and radars are I hate to say simple, but they're simpler than communications in a lot of ways.
Sure,
because you just got pulses, and when you're especially looking at them, we weren't interpreting what the pulses were. We were just going, that's
a pulse.
Here's the fingerprint of this radar.
Yeah.
Great, now we know what it is. Have a nice life. I was always interested in the communications aspect because how you've got these 2 units communicating, how are they doing that? Like, how is this handshaking and communicating, and of course, at the time, the most common way was either voice or teletype.
Right.
And so teletype was just a mystery to me. I had no idea how the hell it worked. And so when I got to that last command, they did communications and other stuff.
Okay.
So radar type stuff. Well, I already had the radar background, so that wasn't a big mystery, but the communications I didn't know anything about. So as I got more and more into it, I started working on VHF and some HF, but mostly VHF and UHF radios. And then I started to get my head wrapped around it. It wasn't until I got out of the Navy and was able to really look at all the different modulation techniques as a ham radio guy and as a radio aficionado, and then start piecing it together.
Yeah.
And then around about 2000, it just... the world changed for ham radio because you could plug it into your computer, not just through a data port. You could use inverter opto-isolators to basically take the signal and put it in your sound card. And then you have the power of whatever software.
Right.
So then these cats were writing the software like, oh, you want teletype software? Here you go. Now you can run teletype on your machine. Now you can run phase shift keying.
Wow.
Now you can run multiple freak shift keying.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all those answers came to me.
Right.
Like not to me, I just learned them. And I was like, oh my God. And even automatic link establishment, ALE, which is used by the military to link HF radios. ALE is a civilian thing now. You can link up HF radios all you want and then move data back and forth.
Yeah.
It blew my mind because everything was based on communications one way or another.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's Ethernet, right? If it's TCP/IP,
Absolutely.
It was based on AX25 protocol, which was built by ham radio nuts in Hawaii to talk between
Isn't
islands.
that shit incredible?
It's all incredible, and it all
amazing.
goes back. So I keep telling people, look, you can shine on radios and communications, but everything you know is based upon how someone communicated over the last 100 years.
Right.
And all we've done, matter of fact, even in my classes, I teach people, I said, well, here's Baudet, this French guy, who came up with this protocol, basically, this language that they use for teletype, which teletypes were around in the late 1800s.
Right.
So he came up with this 5-digit code. You could put the alphabet in it and all this crap. And the term BAUD, baud, comes from baud for baud rate.
No shit.
No shit.
Oh, that's cool.
So
all right.
Here's this guy who creates this language, essentially. And I said, now you think this is old-fashioned, it's not being used. Take your iPhone, look up TTY. The hearing impaired, use TTY.
Right.
The shit's still built into your phone in 2023.
Right.
You've got 45 baud teletype in every phone. And I'm like, you can't get away. Here you got more computing technology than we had all the way up until about 1982 in my phone alone.
Yeah.
And
more than what they put the rocket on the moon with, right? Yeah, absolutely.
And it's still there.
And did the audience hear that? I think you said 42 baud.
45 baud. 45.45 baud.
45
baud rate. It's just amazing to me. Yeah. So anyway, we got off on a track.
Oh, that's incredible.
So you've done radio, telemetry, and then you said you did you kind of did a career change.
Yeah.
And what was that?
Yeah, it was a really interesting career change. The internet bubble occurred.
I'd heard about that.
Yeah, it was big.
And the internet's, it's a series of tubes.
Right.
Shocking.
Yeah, and so I found myself not working. It was right after the peak of my career at Welch Allen. I ended up in project management there doing a lot of big jobs. But anyway, at that time, that whole section of business and employment, and upper management was just whacked across the board. And so I found myself very uncomfortably learning about security technology as a sales representative for ADT, as a matter of fact.
Oh, no kidding.
Probably 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I was with the core commercial group and really learned a tremendous amount of information about security technology and what it does.
Were these like the focus panels at that time? Was that the common ADT panel, or?
Let's see. No, the panels were Vista.
Vista.
I think at that time it was mostly Vista stuff. But anyway, so I learned my chops in sales with ADT. I was very unsuccessful. I still had that mentality. I came up in service.
Yeah.
And then in project management, and you're always kind of, forgive me, salespeople. I have been one, and I've been a very successful one, and I admire all of you. But there was a certain, what am I looking for here? Us and them. Mm-hmm. Kind of it exists. Let's face it. It exists between sales and service and between sales and operations. There's always kind of a shortcoming somewhere along the lines.
I agree.
And so I found myself wrestling with that in my character, in my personality. I'm one of them.
And you're also more customer centric.
Very much so.
Like you'll give the customer what they need as a service guy, but as a salesperson, it's like, I'll give you what you need as soon as you sign this.
To a degree, there are a lot of approaches in sales that are salesy. Mm-hmm. I found my niche in being a consultant, really, really learning and understanding deeply the technology, and like I say in a lot of places, I like to know the rules of the game so I can bend them.
Sure.
And so when you understand that technology, you can really take a big picture approach, and you can work the whole spectrum from the benefits of protecting the safety of their property and their people, to even business owners protecting themselves against those very same things, because time theft and, there's a number of things that are just a reality. Business owners don't like to face that so much. But so I learned a lot about the technology of security and became a pretty successful consultant and salesperson.
Nice.
And found myself after just a few short years in the sexiest job I've ever had. Sorry, ADT, I love being back, but I worked for a company called Feeney Wireless based out of Eugene, Oregon.
Okay.
And they had a skunkworks division called Verisight.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes. And so Feeney Wireless is one of the pioneers in machine-to-machine communications.
Okay.
And they really started making huge market strides when they released products that were small enough to outfit like Coca-Cola machines where you can run a credit card through. That connection is established over cellular.
Also, like point of sale.
Point of sale,
Yeah.
Vehicle tracking. There's putting Wi-Fi bubbles for internet access around law enforcement vehicles, like ambulances.
Wow.
You've got all kinds of telemetry. You can feed something like that from an ambulance and send amazing information to the destination that ambulance is going to.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, patient vitals,
Yeah.
speed of the
sense.
vehicle, direction, everything, right?
Yeah, ETA, base your
Right.
ETA on that. I'm sure. Yeah, I haven't looked into that, but I could totally see.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's really
That is really
so we
cool.
were just talking about data and communications and all that. The amount of information you can pack into a 4G, 5G signal now, which is running in hundreds of megabits per second, is incredible.
It's insane.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's mind-boggling.
It's insane.
It
Yeah.
really is. So
And then we bitch about it.
Right.
I can't
It's
watch
too
South
slow.
Park on my stupid thing.
Skippy.
It's Skippy. Hey, Mike here. I just want to do a quick shout out to all of our listeners. Now, listen, it's been a wonderful couple of months getting the show moving, and we have seen a ton of growth, right? You guys are doing your part. People are downloading. You're telling people. That's super important to get this podcast on the map, okay? We've got good lineup of folks coming in the studio, and the biggest thing that I want you to know is that I want to hear from you. You, the person listening to this, all right? You want to be a part of this show. You want to talk about tips and tricks. You want to talk about things that you're learning in the trade. You want to talk about how this has changed your life. You want to talk about stuff like that, send me an email, okay? It's halfwattpod@gmail.com. And I'm interested in hearing about people who are in the union and people who are not in the union and people who are technicians and people who do alarm work, and people who do camera access work, stuff like that. It doesn't just have to be fire alarm monkeys. It could be anybody. All right? So let's talk about this so that people can realize that this is a career that will change their life.
But so the Skunk Works division supported law enforcement agencies, and our business was engineering and selling covert surveillance packages.
Nice.
I'm honor bound not to speak too much about them, but the idea is basically taking a lot of really high-tech equipment, high-speed cellular gateways, point-tilt zoom cameras with extraordinary capabilities, and building them into packages that would camouflage into a natural environment, whether that's urban, whether it's we did fish and wildlife. You'd be amazed the amount of surveillance that the fish and wildlife enforcement organizations have got to put out there to.
Well, and people don't realize, because what you're talking about, the CIA had been doing for years, which is disguising things to look like objects that innocuous objects you wouldn't even think about. Yeah.
So that was a really fun job. It exposed me to.
That would be really cool.
I'm
going to go to work for these companies.
So, I saw a lot of shit that I didn't want to see. Being privy to.
I can see that.
Human trafficking. The big crime. They don't put these things up on somebody who's got a bunch of parking tickets. These are the real bad guys.
Do we have real bad guys in Oregon?
Oh, believe it.
Yeah.
Believe it.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. But anyways, that was a super.
But not in Clackamas
fun
County.
job.
I'm just saying.
No.
They all live in Clark County or Multnomah. That's cool though. So that you did that for a while, and then it just kind of.
I did it for 5 years.
That's a good long time, man.
We were tremendously successful. We built it into, I think it was an $8 million channel for the company.
Wow.
And then they sold to Inseego, which is a big company in machine-to-machine communications. They were interested in the unique SkyEst technology that Feeney Wireless had developed, and they were interested in selling hundreds of thousands of things that cost a couple $100 as opposed to hundreds of things that cost tens of thousands of dollars. And so they phase it out. And,
there you go.
And on we go.
There goes all the fun.
Right.
Isn't it funny when corporate overlords show up and then all of a sudden they just suck the fun out of the room? You're like, what the hell?
Dude, it was more than fun. I mean, we were doing really good work. We're supporting operators. I built surveillance vans for the United States Marshal's Office.
I was going to say, I would be shocked if you weren't doing work for distinct government 3-letter agencies.
Yeah. And I mean, lots of people have lots of opinions about law enforcement.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about that level of law enforcement, these are the men and women that just put their lives on the line, and they do good, hard work. They put away
and there's
really
a
bad
reason
guys.
for it.
Yeah.
It's like after the Patriot Act came out, all three, they created fusion centers, and people don't know what a fusion center is. But a fusion center is a way to sanitize intelligence information from one side of the fence. There's two sides of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
There's those who are in the know and those who are not. Those who are not in the know need information. It goes through a process called sanitizing.
Right.
So now the information goes through the center. It can be handed to law enforcement who don't have to know how they got the information.
Right.
They just need to know what the information is, and they can act on it.
Mm-hmm.
So a fusion center helps move those things along. So
Makes
it's
sense.
kind of the pros are if you're moving a truck full of drugs, how they have that information you don't need to know about.
Right.
The fact that they're moving a truck full of drugs you do need to know about.
Right.
So do the stop, get the dog. Oh my God, look, the dog is indicated. Let's open it up. My God, there's enough fentanyl to kill everybody in North America. Thanks a lot. You're going to prison. So that's what they've done, and that's what they've changed it to.
Yeah.
And I've known people who have worked in the intelligence community who would go down temporarily and work for law enforcement, and once they had changed that dynamic, they don't have to do that anymore. They didn't have to go do that because there were other people doing it full time. So,
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of have a special relationship with some folks that, were not operators, but worked in kind of a law enforcement capacity. In some capacity or another.
Right.
It was, it's just the nature of the beast. I mean, people don't realize just how much organized crime and how much real, crap happens in these little communities. They just don't have a clue.
That's not necessarily a bad thing for people at large, right?
Right.
Because if they did,
Probably
they wouldn't
didn't.
leave the house. Excuse my language, but
They would just cower, get behind their sand bunkers and keep the weapons.
Right.
And it's like, but it is what it is. I mean, it's this way everywhere. It's not just here.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, and you just have to go on living, man.
Yeah.
You can't let
stop.
that shit get you down,
No.
right?
No, I lived along the border for 26 goddamn years.
Well,
Don't tell me what it's like.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where the first mass shooting ever really happened. That was huge. It was San Ysidro,
right
along the goddamn border. It's like 22 people died there.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's
wow,
right.
It's crazy. So it's like, I mean, we grew up around all that shit,
right?
And I came up here to get away from it, and here it is. But so you worked for this company, and that kind of sucked when the corporate giants came in and took the wind out of your sails.
Yeah, it was unfortunate.
What happened then?
Oh, I had a couple of interesting gigs in between. Things were pretty good at that time, so I wasn't in a hurry to get back to work, and I wanted to do some fun stuff. And so for a little while, I worked for a vehicle upfitter.
Nice.
Sounds like you're familiar. So company that does lighting, communication systems, the push guards, prisoner, barriers in the back of the back.
That's
of the
a big.
cars.
That's a big industry. There's a lot of good folks with new wiring harnesses for everything.
Right. Yeah. There's a
really
couple
cool
of
stuff.
the top players are like Wheelan, who do 90%. I think Federal's the other one, right? These are the big guys.
I didn't know the names of them, but because I did a lot of fire alarm work and it was mostly inspection stuff.
Sure.
I would go into these places, and
Right.
of course I'm one of these kind of guys that's kind of go, what do you guys do here?
Right.
And then suck it all up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Exactly. I love learning from
me too.
Almost everyone that I meet.
Yeah. I totally get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
I had a guy here named Paul who was, matter of fact, he just texted me the other day some information. We're still texting back and forth, like physics stuff. I'm just learning.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Very
Never stop
cool.
learning. So you worked for them, and then what?
Well, then I went to the job that I had right before this one, working for a great little outfit called Innova Northwest out of McMinnville. Small powerhouse, security integrator. And I had engineered a very large camera system for an industrial manufacturer in Longview. I think 146 camera lenses over about 80 radio pairs.
Oh, wow.
All radio. Wow. The infrastructure there is terrible. It's an old plant. All of the underground stuff is unreliable. Even the fiber just isn't, single mode. It's great, but when it gets old and crusty, let's face it, it becomes unreliable. Yeah, so I ended up engineering a point-to-point radio network to support all of those cameras. Big Avigilon system, and it, I think at the head end, we're transporting somewhere along the lines of like 1.2 gigabits per second of camera information.
That's a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah.
Wow. Is it all like 5G kind of frequencies or lower?
It's all 5 gigahertz point to point.
Okay, yeah. So you're just aiming microwave antennas at each other and moving data. Yeah,
pretty much.
Oh.
Real challenge. The property itself is only 4 miles long, and when you're working with high gain parabolic, albeit small,
Yeah, but you got to be dead on. You got to aim them dead on.
Not only do you have to be dead on, but when you get dead on, an installer would be, I think, biased toward railing the power up just because. Here again, back to the desensitization conversation, right? If you don't pull it back as far as you can until you start suffering data loss and then bump it back up a little bit, you'll be overpowering that link and causing its own interference.
Yep. You're exactly
and you'll slow it down.
You'll slow it down.
And if you're sending 4K video over a wireless link, it's got to be fast.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
but everybody's thinking, oh, well, we need all this power when that's not the case. What you need is clarity.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's
so
exactly
that the checksums come back right.
Well, so I liken it to trying to listen to a whisper when someone's yelling in your ear. Right?
Yeah.
It makes sense.
It makes total sense.
You can connect with that.
But see, you have a perspective on that because you've worked in data communications for so long.
Right.
I learned it recently, really, not recently, but when I became a ham, where we were using phase shift keying when PSK 31 came out. So 31 baud phase shift keying on HF. I'm talking to a guy in Los Angeles, and that's one hop from Oregon City to Los Angeles on 14 megahertz, 20 meters.
Good old terrestrial communications. Huh?
And this guy and I were talking keyboard to keyboard, and he's like, what's your power out? And this is 0.75 watts. And he goes, 75 watts? That's way too much. And he goes, I can barely hear you. And I said, no, 0.75, 3/4 of a watt. He goes, no way. And so I turn my power to 5 watts, and he goes, way. So we were actually talking keyboard to keyboard on HF. I was talking to him. He wasn't using that low power at less than a watt. Right. At the time.
That's incredible.
Then I just bumped it to 2 watts so we could have a nice conversation without anything getting lost.
Right.
But you're exactly right. And then I came to understand, it's not, and the ham radio thing uses little power as you need to get the job done. Right. Not try to, be the loudest guy in the band.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you're working more efficiently, right? Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of benefits.
Yeah, everything runs cooler.
Yeah, exactly. Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's neat. So then you got this point-to-point system going.
Yeah, so I got it all. Well, so actually I didn't get it going yet. I was the sales engineer, if you will. I was in a sales role. And it's a pretty complex system. And so we agreed that I would project manage the job is I would shift my role to project management, which is what returned me to project management. I had been a PM 10 years before in medical, and that's really where my passion is, honestly. I really like PMing. I like being a leader. I like surrounding myself with really intelligent, capable people, and the interfacing with the client and the whole experience for me is really, really rewarding. I was successful in sales, but I didn't enjoy it, that much.
I can get that.
Yeah, and I enjoy this a lot. And so I project managed that job. And not only did we do that, but Innova, really, I got to boast on some of their capabilities for being such a small company, man. We put fire alarms, I think, in 28 buildings in the course of about 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah, that's a huge
great
deal.
team.
For a small company. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great team.
Huh.
We lived up there for, most of that time, 4 days a week, I'd say.
Wow.
Yeah. Great project, though. But, as growth happens and everything, time and fortune and a little bit of a sabbatical in between really leveled me out and got me ready for where I am now, man.
So now then you just made a jump to ADT, and now you're a PM in here.
I didn't make the jump. I took 5 months.
So did you go on a walkabout?
I did.
Where'd you go? Big timer.
A lot of places
Sorry,
locally. A lot of places locally. So I had a life event that kind of scared me.
Okay.
I thought I was having a heart attack, to be honest with you. Lots of stress, carrying a heavy workload and really not being dialed in and centered in a balanced way where I could manage that spiritually for myself. And the scare was enough for me to recognize that, well, I can't do this. I got to stop, get off the boat for a little while, right? So my plan was 3 months. It worked out to be 5. And it was just a lot of fun, relaxing, meditation, yoga, spirit deep dive, all kinds of really good stuff.
Who did you read, like J. Krishnamurti, or who are you into?
I was all over the place.
Okay.
Really just working in, my own personal meditation, and finding my own space, comfort in my own space again.
In your own, being comfortable in your own skin.
Being comfortable in my own skin, good company for myself. It took a long time to get over the feeling that I should be delivering better. I should be more ahead of where I am with, workload and a balanced lifestyle, And taking that time off, it was incredible. It was a long time. I know not many people can do that, but I would recommend a good break to anyone.
I'd love to take that. That would be incredibly fun for me.
It was life-changing, man.
I bet.
I'm 52 years old.
Oh, you're an old man. Get out.
I'm in better physical shape than I was when I was 40. I'm in better mental shape than I've ever been in my life.
Nice.
I'm centered in a way that allows me to deal with all of the issues that come along with managing complex, integrated security projects. I don't only do fire for ADT. We do, I also do surveillance and intrusion and access control. And, that comes with a lot of complexity and challenges in personalities and I thrive on it, and I find myself in a place where I can really be a great servant to the men and women that I'm leading. And that is a great reward.
I mean, you're the second ADT not manager, but professional I've talked to who's still working for ADT. That's been really impressive to hear. Really has.
I'm glad to hear that.
I mean, you're the second person to come in here and gone, this is what I do, this is where I do it, and I'm damn good at it. and I like it. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I don't always get that, so it's nice to hear. I had Gary Youngberg on the show, who was an ADT tech from years ago, and he's a nice at 4. He's a heavy hitting EST guy. I mean, this guy is like, EST owes him a lot.
Right.
I mean, he's good at what he does. He's a serious integrator. And he just raves about his time in ADT and what he learned from working on the equipment, because they've been around for so long.
Right.
I've worked on ADT switches that were older than me. I'm like, holy cow, look at this thing. This is big. You can kill a brother with this.
No kidding, man. No
kidding. It's cool. It's cool to hear, So you also play guitar, so is that part of your sabbatical? Have you always been playing, or did you
that's an interesting story and question.
Wax eloquent.
Also.
I want to hear it.
Okay. So I grew up in a mixed household, single Caucasian mom, living with African-American father, and a half white and half black brother, who was from another woman. So it was a completely beautifully mixed family,
blended family,
right? Living in Claremont, California, which is in LA County. For people who don't know, there are 7 college campuses within the city limits of this little town, which bring people from all over the world. So it really, truly was a melting pot, great place to grow up, people from all over the world. So I have a gift of understanding dialects from if you're speaking anything that's even close to English, I can pick it up, So as a young kid, I didn't know it, but my dad's name is Clabe Hangen, C-L-A-B-E, Clabe Hangen. And he had always been a semi-famous blues man in the Claremont, Laverne, Los Angeles County area for a very long time. He played music at Penny University in Laverne, which was a hotspot for blues in Southern California at the time.
Cool.
And growing up, I was just a kid. I didn't really appreciate the music, especially, Dad would just sit in the living room rehearsing, not even rehearsing songs, honestly, just running through scales and just polishing up his chops. Well, it turns out that through the course of my young childhood, we had the likes of Taj Mahal was a close personal friend of my father's.
No kidding.
Yes. The linkage to Taj is that Ben Harper, are you familiar with Ben Harper? I went to high school with him. He was one of my older brother's best friends. And my dad had a part in helping to teach Ben how to play guitar.
Damn.
And so I didn't really recognize a lot of this as a young man. And of course, the Ben Harper times was after, a later point in my life where I was on a separate path. But anyway, music was rich in the family. And I didn't pick up the guitar until I moved away from California to Oregon, probably about 25 years ago or so.
Nice.
And then I started putting everything together. And I was walking through the grocery store at Safeway, and I heard a song that Ben Harper sings, "Always Have to Steal My Kisses from You." And I thought, Ben has he's got a notable speaking voice. And I thought, man, that sounds like Ben. And I looked it up. Sure enough, it was Ben. But anyway, so I guess that's to say that, music has always been rich in the family, but I didn't pick it up until much later. Yeah.
Nice. And now you play regularly and
probably every other week,
nice.
with at least one other person. The occasional couple months here and there, I might get together with a few. Self-taught. Sloppy, but I can keep a great beat, and I like to sing.
I think it's just something if you enjoy it. I think it's really all that. I don't play an instrument. I sing, but I don't play.
Right.
That's my only thing. I've tried, but I don't have the skill sets.
Singing is fun though too, man.
Singing I can do.
I love singing.
But the rest of it, as a matter of fact, when I'm programming at work, the guys can tell because I have my AirPods in, and
right.
Oh, you listen to Mozzie Star, huh? Or whatever, whatever tripe I've got playing.
That's funny.
The guys on the other side of the queue for me, because I could always tell when you're programming something heavy, because I'm singing The Offspring.
Right.
But, yeah, it's good. I love watching bands. I love watching music and listening to it. But I'm such a studio fanatic that if I go to see a band, like I like Garbage, I like The Offspring.
Okay.
Duran Duran's coming. I was thinking about seeing them. So they come in June, and Garbage is coming as well. I probably will see Garbage, but when I go and see somebody live, if they play as well as they do in their studio, like I'm freaking hooked.
That's off the chain
it's
when that
off
happens.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I have seen like my top band of all, the band I've seen more than anybody else is Cracker. I have seen Cracker, and I've seen them do Mississippi Studios, acoustic sets together.
Right.
David Lowery and Johnny Hickman. I've seen them play at the Aladdin. I've seen them play. I can't even tell you. I think I've seen them 7 times.
And they just smash it when they're live.
I can't get enough. I can't get enough of them. Absolutely. If I ever have a moment, I'll listen to Cracker.
Right.
That's just the best band for me.
I'm going to have to write it down. I'm not familiar with Cracker.
Oh my God. It's if you like kind of a country rock, you can't really describe it. You can't describe their music. It's just absolutely golden. And I mean, if I say The Offspring, you know what you're going to get. Like if you see The Offspring in concert, they just came and I missed them. If you get a chance to see The Offspring in concert, you will not be disappointed.
Really?
Oh my God. The best concert I ever saw in my life was The Offspring.
Very cool.
And it was at the Roseland. And they blew the breaker in the place, the main breaker, like twice.
Oh, literally?
Yeah, literally blew. I mean, as they were playing, the lights went out. And
right.
And they're like, shit. I wanted to go see Noodles, who's one of their one of their main guitarists. I wanted to see how he could play so fast. I had no idea anybody could play an act so fast.
Really?
And I had to see how he did it.
Yeah.
And I just was overwhelmed by their music. They were absolutely jaw-droppingly good to watch, and they sounded precisely like you hear. The energy, all of it. And I just, by the time I got done, I was right on the edge of the mosh pit. By the time I got done, my T-shirt was down on my knees. There wasn't a stitch of clothing on me that wasn't soaked from sweat. And I went back to work and worked for half the night and fell asleep. I went, I can't do this crap anymore. But so I love music. And there's some local folks like Miller and Sasser and that I've seen a couple of years ago. It's just some incredible talent. And even at the last place I worked at, there was a guy named Guy Cutler who was a singer, musician, writer. There was Jim Bramlage was a musician. Even the CEO was a musician, and the damn general manager were all players.
Kidding.
There must have been 10 axe players in this place, and they were all good. I was like, damn. Here I'm the only guy who can't play an instrument.
Right. Hey, but you can sing though.
Well, I can sing.
There's a lot of people who can play instruments but can't sing, brother.
That's
they shouldn't sing.
Maybe
some of them just shouldn't sing.
But I really envy the fact that you could play, and
it's fun.
that you've carried forward. So you've done some life centering, you've done some pretty heavy technical work. Now you're back PMing and happy. Mm-hmm. What's tell me about your gig. I mean, how long you been back at ADT and how's?
Just 3 months now.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, a lot of heavy lifting in learning. Boy, I'll tell you what. ADT is no joke.
Yeah.
They deliver projects, software systems, reporting systems, disciplines, an incredible work ethic. I can't say enough. Honestly, here again, revisiting, 52 years old. I've worked in corporate environments. I have worked in small private environments. I'm in now large corporate, right?
Yeah,
ADT,
that's pretty good sized.
$1 billion company, right?
Yeah, big timer.
Big organization. The culture that has been created at the Portland branch here is the best professional culture I've ever worked in.
No kidding.
It's amazing.
No kidding.
It's amazing. The teamwork,
Yeah.
the recognition, the respect among every single level within the office is just, it's amazing.
Nice. I like that. Excellent. Huh.
I'm really, it's not an advertisement. I'm really blown away by it. I'm proud to be a
even
part
if it
of
were an advertisement, I would still want to hear it.
Yeah.
But that's nice to hear, because I've worked for large corporations, and I'm working for a large one now, and small mom and pa's. And I've kind of, I left to go into this to become this cog in the machine that I work for now. And I fit right in there. And I knew I fit in there because I worked there before. So I just kind of came back and went, I'm this little gear that works right here.
Right.
They said, well, we want you to be a work center supervisor, coordinator. And I went, no, I don't want to coordinate anything. I just want peace. I had a guy come back from, he'd went to Montana. He'd become a big, operations manager, which is what I was, at a corporation in Montana. And he came back, and when he came to work for me, he's a nice at 4. He just said, I don't want to do anything. I just want to tech for a while. And I thought, well, that's kind of odd, because this guy's got some mad skills.
Right.
And he just said, no, just let me kind of go out in the field and do something for a while. And
I
said,
see that.
Yeah. And I said, do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what we did. And I didn't put any pressure on him to do anything, and other than what he wanted to do. And now he's finally to a point where he felt good enough to start picking up the ball, and now he's doing more stuff. So he's like project managing DAS systems and radio systems, and he's liking it where he's at, and he's sort of found his groove, and he's back into doing it.
Right.
And when I left the company and went to work for the Hill OHSU, I did the same thing. I just went, let me just work on the system, and let me just dial this in.
Yeah.
And even I'll spend days programming and working on graphics and dialing stuff in. And there's just this level of satisfaction when I walk away from it and I look over, and we used to have a list of problems this big, and now they're this big.
Right.
And now I can see what I want to do and where I want to take the system.
Yeah.
And I'm just going, this is the only employee I want. It's just this thing. Like, I'll manage this thing. Like, I'll do what but don't make me manage people for a while. Just give me. And it's been almost a year and a half. I have no desire to go up. Like, I've already reached apex of my career.
Sure.
I've already hit that height. I'm just ready to find the nadir as I slide out to retirement at some point. I'm 58, so I don't know when that's going to be. But
sometimes we recognize the cost. Like, I don't want to pay that cost anymore, Yeah.
Well, and I've had, like, where you had that moment where those months where you're able to do that.
Yeah,
I've had some serious trauma happen in my life, like really bad crap. And the last one that hit me so hard. It was so bad when it all came undone and I couldn't stop. I was still managing. So I had to just keep that oar in the water.
Right.
But meditation and being able to just hit my knees and stop and get the monkey man to stop talking. Yeah. My old man had always pushed me to read a guy named J. Krishnamurti, who's, if you know anything about him, he's just one thing. And he'd always push me to read this guy. And every time I tried to read the book, I'm like, I'm not in the right headspace for it.
Yeah.
And when I hit the really heavy part of my life, I finally read one of his books, and I could have written it.
Well, see, they land at the right time for you,
They land at the right time.
Right?
And I went, this guy is that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
That's where he's at. Now I can get this. Mm-hmm. And it's helped tremendously. But when I get out of that practice, like I bicycle to work and exercise, which kind of helps keep my head about that stuff. When I get out of there, I can tell, like, when I'm not centered.
Right.
And I need to figure out where to get in the right headspace. Right. Music is one of my biggest ways of doing it. I can pop in music with my AirPods and immediately find where I need to be.
Right.
And even though I can't play it, I damn sure I'm aficionado of listening to it.
You bet.
I was doing Red Hot Chili Peppers all the way here to the damn parking lot.
Absolutely, man. And that's meditative, right?
It is.
But, when you're, so I just recently graduated as master Reiki practitioner now.
Really?
So, yeah, I'm a master level practitioner.
Tell me about that.
So Reiki is a form of energetic healing. Okay. Interesting if you want to dive down this little rabbit hole with me. Being a radio person.
My podcast, I can do whatever we want.
All right. Excellent. So
watch the producers all freaking out on this side. We're not even looking at them.
So being a radio man, you understand radio frequency, you understand vibration.
I do.
Right?
I get it.
I would think. For me, the journey, the interest began a couple of years ago when I ran across a little brief bit of research from Dr. Emoto, Japanese Dr. Emoto. And his studies were, there's this whole thought process of if you speak nicely to your plants, they'll grow better than if you don't, right? And so he began early in cymatic, which is sound frequency, physical relationship type science research back in the day. And he took photographs of water molecules in the moment that they're freezing. So they drop the temperature, freeze a water molecule, and in the moment that it's freezing, he would speak intentions on it. I love you, for example, or you're beautiful, or conversely, I hate you, you're ugly. And interestingly, the water molecules formed with the positive vibrations in symmetrical, beautiful formations like you would expect, like a snowflake or ice formation, and those that were spoken upon with disdain or negative energy, if you will, froze in asymmetrical forms that weren't very pretty. And so following that, the whole idea behind a lot of his research was, and I could very well be misspeaking, so don't take me literally to this, explore it yourself. But the human body is largely made up of water, right? You're experiencing my voice is the result of vibrations, emanating from me to you, and they carry along with them a certain intention, right? I'm having a great time tonight in our conversation. I'm sure that's carrying across in what you're hearing, right?
Yeah.
But if I had bad or harmful vibrations, I think that would also come across, right? So that got me interested in vibrations and cymatics and just energy exchange. It started me through this whole path that, forgive me, I forgot where I was going with the point of the question.
Reiki.
To Reiki. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. So through this journey, I found the Home Spiritual Center, which is located in Salem, Oregon. Extraordinary metaphysical place of gathering, very much like a church, lots of different walks of life. And I got introduced to Reverend Jen Rothrock, who's a Reiki master. And this funny thing is, I remember as a kid actually playing guitar when I was first learning and becoming a member of the band that I did play in at that time. We opened for a metaphysical healing office in Salem many years ago. And I remember in the backyard, we're playing guitar, and there's a woman sitting in a chair, and there's another woman standing over her with her hands kind of hovering over the other woman's body. And I remember asking, what's going on over there? And Reiki healing. And I remember at that time in my life thinking, what a joke, that's just silly. She's not even touching her. What could possibly be happening there? But after coming to this understanding of vibration and intention and energy that just exists between us, Reiki became interesting, and I got a Reiki treatment, which was mind-blowing. It was a really interesting experience, like a spiritual massage, I guess. It was weird, yeah. Fascinated me. And then Jen opened a class, and over the last year or so, journeyed from Reiki 1, 2, 3 master, and it's a great experience. But another source, I think, of foundation, centeredness, balance, right?
Yeah,
good stuff. It's a good mix for a person who works in technology and managing people and multifaceted
absolutely.
projects, right? It's a good grounding.
Managing people is hard.
Yeah,
managing people is a skill that every time I think I'm good at it, I meet somebody who really is.
Yeah.
And so I one thing I understood early on was I thought I would be the best at something. Like I had this desire to be the best, martial artist or the best whatever,
right.
And there was always somebody better, always. And not around not on the other side of the globe,
right.
Down the street.
Right,
and you're like, wow, I'm just one
outside of your own head.
Yeah, exactly. Your little brother's
right.
better. You didn't know it. And so it was humbling to go back, and the uniqueness of humanity is that we're all unique. There's nobody right. better than me except
right.
me.
Right.
And the only person I can change in this equation is me.
Precisely.
And dealing with what's going on and dealing with other people and what's happening is really my interpretation of what's happening
right.
and how I'm going to deal with
yeah.
it. And getting that under my belt and then just working forward and not back was some of the I'll go ahead and share it, but I had I've been married twice, and during my first marriage I lost both of my kids, so I've put both my daughters in the ground at different times.
Literally, man, literally. I'm so sorry to hear that.
It's not here to.
No, I understand.
Definitely not here to take the conversation down.
Yeah.
The process and the part of the grief process and part of the healing process for me was going through all the counseling I needed to go through, all the talking about it I needed to go through, all the experiences I needed to go through, right. talking to other people who had lost kids, talking to other people who had lost their parents, because I've lost everything. I lost all that shit.
Yeah.
So, and then coming back going, it's okay. Each day I'm alive. Each day I wake up and move forward is one day more than a whole plethora of people. Okay. Yep. And the end is near. I mean, there's going to be a point where I won't wake up one day, and that's okay.
Yeah, we're terminal beings.
We're terminal beings. Yeah. The death rate's 1 per person, and we're all going to have it. So coming to grips with your own mortality, the mortality of others, it is all of a sudden you get this sense of each day. This is all you've got. This is all you've got.
Right.
Matter of fact, you're living time at the speed of light. People going, I always wanted to go fast. You are going fast. You're living
you are the light.
Now.
Yeah,
this is it.
Yeah.
It moves.
Yeah.
Time and everything moves at the speed of light.
Totally.
And what we talked about a second ago is gone and will never come back. And what's coming now is coming at you at the speed of light.
Yeah.
So you're at it. There's no going faster than this.
Right.
There just doesn't exist. If you can't make sense of what you're doing now, what the hell do you think you're going to do a month from now? You can't. This is it, man. You doesn't get any better than this. Your life doesn't get any better than what it is right now, and how you make the decision on whether you're gonna, you're gonna make something of the next 10 seconds. Or are you going to get hit by a damn bus?
Right.
You don't know.
Right.
But you do know that you are in control of you at this time and how you interface with other people.
Well, let's hope so.
Hopefully. And how they interface with you. Because sometimes I can, people, when I see people taking advantage of stuff, that's when I fall short. Like when people go, well, we're going to do this. I'm like, who the hell are you? Like this is not... those are my buckets. You know, so Mike, you don't tell me what to do with my shit. And so, you know, I can still see all the shortcomings that are there, and gotta just know that, dude, at some point I got to get over this.
Right.
And just, what do I want to be? Well, do I want to be an Abe Lincoln? Do I want to be a Winston Churchill? Do I want to be a Patton? Do I want to be a J. Krishnamurti?
Right.
Or do I want to be a Mike Brooks?
Yeah.
And I want to be able to affect as many people as possible and leave absolutely no trace. Like no trace. Like there should be, the Zen is, and I'm very much into yin and yang and the balance in that there should be no record of any changes you've made in this world, but your effect on this world should be massive. Meaning the change is there. You brought change here. You brought positive, good things here. No one knows how to
Not in the interest of recognition or anything like that, right? Yeah.
Not in the interest of recognition. Not to it should be no ego in it.
Yeah.
It should be egoless.
Right.
If that, to me, the day I can step 1 foot forward with no ego is the day I should go. That's the day I should be over with. You finally made it. You're done. And you know, my philosophy is thus, but you know, I'm currently in my brain, you're talking about metaphysics. I'm looking at these UAVs and this issue that we're going on. Everybody who's listening to my podcast and knows I've been spun up about the Navy videos at TikToks and all these things. And now that they've got whatever the hell's going on now,
I'm with you there.
I finally wrote the president an email yesterday morning and said, okay, man, enough. Okay, give us some information here.
Yeah.
Come on, really, seriously. I mean, this is enough. Like, stop hiding all this behind classification and tell us what you know.
Has he gotten back to you yet?
Nah, man, he won't get back to me. He didn't know me from Adam's house cat. But it's at least my civic duty and my job as an American to say, hey, you know what? I've got every right to reach out, you know, and say, give me some information here. I got to know. Because I think there's more to it than what we know.
I think there's multiple dimensions. I think there's something. I think there's more to it on the governmental side. I think there's more to it on the terrestrial side, wherever it's coming from, and I think there's more to it from the extraterrestrial side.
I think you're right.
I think it's all happening.
Well, and like Paul Waterman and I were talking physics a couple of weeks ago. I've been just entrenched in reading books on physics and trying to get my head wrapped around the space-time. Matter of fact, I'm working on an Einstein book.
How's that going for you?
Oh, shit, man. About the time you think you know what the hell you're talking about, you listen to somebody who's a physicist and you just go, what? What? Especially when it gets down to the...
It's just like... Right.
I feel exactly the way. About the time I think I've got this concept. Yeah. Matter of fact, I was sitting in a meeting last night, because I certainly wasn't enjoying the meeting, working on gravity, working on trying to understand that again, just to get a grip on it.
That's neat.
Just because I want to know how the machine works. And I've come up with a couple of theories which don't mean squat because, you know, who the hell cares? But I'm starting to think about it in those terms. And now when I listen to these guys, like I'm picking up about every 10th thing they're saying, or before it was every 20th.
Wow. That's funny.
When I first started, I didn't understand any of it. So I'm getting closer.
That's funny, because you flipping that page and showing, you know, these formulae for gravity.
Yeah, I'm just working. I'm just kind of working out some physics things.
Yeah, I really have a high level of respect for minds that can wrap themselves around that level of mathematic understanding.
Me too, because man, I never
got there.
I didn't even get through calculus because I couldn't understand.
Calculus broke me. I ended at calculus. That's why I didn't get my double E.
I didn't even get that far. I think I ended in somewhere in trigonometry. Yeah. My foot fell off and I had to go.
Right.
I just couldn't get it. But it was a high school. When I did college, a little bit of college, I had no problem with the math. I could do chemistry and mathematics. I could understand if I could put my hands around it and see the physics of it. I could do it.
That's interesting.
But I couldn't do it if it was just, now class, let's talk about x squared equals. Right. Oh my God, that's not teaching.
I don't know. I couldn't get past calc. So I didn't double E. I was in a double E program, but I didn't. I ended up just exiting with my associates in my third year of engineering.
Just going, I've had enough.
Just because I couldn't get past the math. Yeah. I didn't have the foundation. I was a very smart kid, but I was a rebel kid with lots of, issues, and I didn't spend a lot of time at school.
Yeah.
I actually dropped out in my senior year. After the beginning of the story of our journey full circle.
Yeah, we should probably we could end on that. So you're back in LA, getting some hawk merchandise, about to go to the Clink.
That's hilarious. So funny.
Man, we just turned it full circle there.
Yeah, amazing.
Would you come back again?
I've really enjoyed this conversation. Good. Yeah, I'd like to.
I would love to have you back.
Yeah, great.
Thanks for listening to the Half Watt Podcast. We always want to hear from you, and we encourage you to email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with questions or even your own stories. Funny, crazy, or praiseworthy, we want to hear it all. You can follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod to stay up to date on our feed. And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And share us with a friend, the best way to help us grow. The Half Watt Podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios.